gotten a few questions in the comments that gave me the idea for this video. Today we're going to be going over a few maybe lesser known game mechanics and or character interactions that I think could be useful. So first one, we're starting off easy. I think most people probably know this, but it's the Bulwark Freya tech. Right? You put Bulwark on your Freya, and because of this skill 1 passive, giving your team 4% turn meter whenever you gain a buff, Bulwark gives you immunity right at the start of the fight, which gives your Freya this turn meter. But for Freya specifically, right, down here, the effect is doubled, so she gains 8%. Now, the Bulwark Freya tech isn't the only part of this that I want to talk about, because, most people know about this already, but what most people probably don't know is how you calculate it, right? So I've seen a lot of people say, right, so my Bulwark Freya is 331. I've seen a lot of people say it's just her speed times 1.08, right, because it's an 8% push. But that's actually wrong, right? She's not 357. It's actually your speed divided by 0.92, right? And that gives you the correct speed. I don't remember why it works that way. Something to do with it pushing her own turn meter at the start of the battle or whatever. But I've tested this in game with other units, right? With characters that should be able to outspeed 357, and they don't. So if you want to know how fast your Freya is going to be, you divide whatever her speed is by 0.92. On to the next one. Let's say one of your characters is 100% crit rate, and they still miss a crit. Well, there can be two reasons for that. One is because it's 100 flat, and what the game does is if you're like 99.8% crit rate, it'll round up to 100, so there's actually still a small chance that you can miss just from that rounding. All right, because it's not actually 100, but it says it is, because it rounds up, so 101% is, just to be safe. But the other reason is because of this, right? I think most people know about this part, right? When you're advantageous affinity, you get the crit rate and the final damage. But I've seen a lot of people forget or just not know in the first place that your crit rate against the elements you're weak to is actually reduced by 30%, right? Minus 50 effect accuracy, 15% damage dealt, right? This is brutal, right? This effect accuracy is also one of the reasons why, why your CC units can just completely miss somebody that they probably shouldn't be missing. But it makes sense when you've got, 50% reduced effect accuracy. That's also why something like Holden's S2, which has a 100% chance to hit, misses all the time against blue characters, right? Because typically you're not building him with any effect accuracy. This minus 50%, I believe, puts him in the negatives, right? So he's like negative 50% effect accuracy, which functions like that character having 100% effect res, which cuts your base chances in half, right? So how effect accuracy and effect resistance work is whatever your effect accuracy is multiplies the base chance. You have 100% effect accuracy, it doubles your base chance. Right, this would be a 200% skill instead of 100%. And then effect resistance, right? So up to 100%. Everything past 100% doesn't do anything except fight against the enemy's effect resistance, right? Effect resistance fights against the opponent's effect accuracy 1-to-1 until they match. So let's say somebody has 100 effect accuracy. You have 100 effect resistance. They cancel out. Right, so they're back down to base chance. That's really rough for someone like Nivette, who has really low base chances. Right, 15% on the skill 1, 25% on the skill 3. It's rough. You kind of want 100% more effect accuracy than the enemy has effect res for a character with really low base chances like this, so that you can double them, right? Because 50% for 3 hits is pretty good. 30% for 2 hits is still pretty trash, but it's not the worst. But that's when the effect accuracy and effect resistance match. When the effect resistance is 100% higher than your effect accuracy, so for instance, an effect res Linglo versus Holden, the effect resistance actually cuts your base chances in half, right, up to, right, if it's 100%. I don't think it says it anywhere in-game how that actually works, right, but people figured it out. Another thing to keep in mind is that no matter what your base chance is, the game has like hard-coded in a 10% chance that any debuff or negative effect can just miss, right? So even if it's 100% base chance and the opponent has no effect resistance, they're not a strong element against you, they can still just not get affected by the debuff because of that 10%. The only skills that ignore that are the ones that say they do, right? So, and a guaranteed exaltation, right? Like this is guaranteed to hit as long as they don't have immunity. I think this actually might even go through immunity. I'm not sure. Abilities like this that say they're guaranteed, or like this that says it's guaranteed, this will ignore that 10%. But anything that doesn't specifically say that it's guaranteed to hit has a 10% chance to miss always. No matter how high the base chance is, how high your effect accuracy is, there's always a 10% to miss. Next, we're moving on to Beonten. So, Beonten's skill 2 here, it doesn't give you turn meter plus, right? It says you immediately start their next turn. So what this means is, if this guy puts Torpor to try and stop you from gaining turn meter, right, your Lily, your Turandot, your Suki, all of them are not going to be able to boost someone's turn meter. However, Beonten will, right, because it doesn't give turn meter plus, it just immediately grants them an extra turn. So she's able to ignore Torpor, which is pretty neat. Next, we'll move on to turn meter manipulation. So I've done a lot of testing on this. I can't say definitively that this is how it works, but my theory is as follows. 100% turn meter is clearly not the cap. It displays as 100%, however, the game does keep track of the exact value. So let's say you are at 98% turn meter, and this plume passive goes off, boosting you by 8%. In-game, if you click on the buff icon and look at your turn meters, it will say that you're at 100%, but because you were at 98 and you boosted 8, it'll actually bring you to 106% turn meter, right? And the game keeps track of where everyone's turn meters are. So if you boost your entire team with, say, Turandot, 30%, you started at, I don't know, 80, right? Your whole team will be at 110% turn meter. And then let's say a Gigabyte Sanya or something triggers this 35% turn meter, and she was at 80% also, right? She'll jump up to 115 and cut your guys. Right? Same goes for anyone on Lighthouse or Strive or Reaper Steps or whatever. So if you want to know if you're going to get cut by somebody, you can actually calculate ahead of time how far past 100% your team is pushing and whether they'll actually be able to catch up to you. The part that's mostly speculation on my part is I believe there's some sort of cap or limit to how many times you can be pushed past 100%. From what I've seen, it seems like it's once, right? If you push, right, if you give your team turn meter push and it brings them past 100%, it seems like any other abilities that would push the turn meter again don't. I'm not entirely sure if that's how it works. Maybe it lets you push one more time, or the effect is reduced by half or something, but it seems like you get to push past 100% one time, and then that's it, right? Or potentially, it lets you push past 100, and then if your opponent also pushes past 100, it lets you push again, or something. But if they don't, then you aren't able to gain more turn meter. I'm not exactly sure how it works because, you know, you can't, it displays as 100%, so it's really hard to actually see what's going on and test it. It seems there's some kind of mechanic that stops indefinite turn meter push. Yeah. Anyway, so that's how sometimes, even if you're at 100%, you'll still get cut because the game does keep track of your exact position on the turn meter. And if someone goes past 100, they'll still leapfrog you. And I think the last thing I have for this video is debuffs. In this game, any attack that applies a debuff can also benefit from the effects of that debuff. Right? So Holden, with his skill 1 defense down, if the first hit applies defense down, all 3 hits of his skill 1 will do extra damage because of the reduced defense. Raymary, with the S3, if she lands vulnerable on the S3, the damage will be increased by 30%, right? Because the attack that applies the debuff can benefit from the effects of the debuff. I believe buffs are the same, right? So, well, obviously, characters that buff themselves on a skill will get the damage increase of the buffs and debuffs as well. So any of these skills that apply a debuff can gain the damage bonus from said debuff. But yeah, I think that's all I've got for today. I come up with another list of like maybe five or six more neat little interactions, I'll make a part 2. If you guys have any cool interactions that I didn't go over, maybe leave them in the comments. And I'll see you next time.